Welcome back to the People's Basics. We're here to give you another rundown of the Basic Brief, where we talk about our feature story from this week's Basic Brief, as well as answer questions from you, the community. This week, we're going to be talking about basic income, as we had the Basic Income March this week. But without further ado, let's get into our feature story of the week. Okay, Matthew. So, what is our feature story of this week?
Yeah, the featured story is around the debate about the reconciliation bill currently trying to be passed through Congress. Since there is some spoilers within the Democratic Party, the 3.5 trillion number attached to the package seems like a little bit of a dream at the moment. And there was a report that came out from CNN that said one of the things that could be on the chopping block to get that number down would be the child tax credit, which I just think would be a ridiculous move by the Democratic Party to cut that. Because passing that child tax credit in the relief package earlier this year was a humongous win for not only the Democrats, but for people in this country, because they got cash into their bank accounts and that did transform their lives. And that's something that materially impacts people's lives. And the easiest way to win in politics is to materially change people's lives. And we have midterms coming up where it's looking like Democrats are in serious trouble of losing their very slim, if you can even call it a majority, in the Senate, losing seats in the House, and to not include this child tax credit expansion in this package and not passing the package at all would just be a disaster for Democrats in going into the midterms. So Joe Biden needs to get serious, because his legacy as a president and his administration relies on what he does to get this package passed and what's inside of it. So he needs to be going to these conservative Democrats like Manchin and like Sinema and let him know that you are ruining the Democratic Party's prospects. You are ruining my legacy as a president. Your constituents in your districts support these policies. They want these policies. These policies will help them. It needs to be very public, letting those two know that and letting them fall in line.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments wholeheartedly. The sentiments that we are, as a party, not being able to get stuff done because we are fractured at the point where we have two separated caucuses willing to balk at different parts of the proposals is a bad look for the party as a whole. And the only reason Democrats on the left are having to threaten killing this infrastructure bill is because we are having Republican, essentially in sheep's clothing, people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema basically railroad this proposal, taking what was already a compromise of the 3.5 trillion in social infrastructure and giving basically non-existent qualms about it. Joe Manchin's a little bit more clear. He said he's wanted to means test some programs, and he wants to have some cuts to home care aid, as well as some cuts to this child tax credit expansion. But Sinema has basically given nothing in details whatsoever. And so they have been stalling this out because there's been this vote that's been promised by Nancy Pelosi of having a vote on infrastructure. And so they're trying to just run out the clock on reconciliation so that they don't have any threat potentially from killing it, basically because they already got their infrastructure, their hard infrastructure bill done. And so I just want to note that Nancy Pelosi made a big pivot on her position. Beforehand, she said that she was only going to be bringing up this hard infrastructure bill for a vote if the reconciliation bill got a vote first. That is no longer the case. We are expecting this bill to go forward for a vote on September 30th. That is yesterday, as of Thursday. But we want to make sure that we keep you up to date on this story. So if it doesn't pass on that day, we'll be following up on this story more next week.
Yeah, and this whole situation just shows us where the current state of the Democratic Party is, because that pivot by Pelosi, even Chuck Schumer was blindsided by it. He was very upset by it. Yeah. So we're just completely split right now. It's a total mess. And Biden really needs to get this stuff together and get this passed.
Yeah, the buck stops with him. So I think it's time now to get into our mailbag question of the week. So this week, unlike past weeks, we got a little bit more than one question. We got a lot more from the basic income march. You all wanted to ask us some questions about basic income, whether it's for your own knowledge or to clarify for others. So we got 3 questions in total. So we'll have one for myself, one for Matthew, and one we'll both answer. So Matthew, the first question that they wanted to ask for you is whether or not a universal basic income would be something that is in replacement to welfare or stacks with welfare. What's its general relationship with the existing welfare system?
Yeah, there's obviously different takes on UBI and how it relates to this, but I think in an ideal world, it's something that works together and stacks with the current welfare system. Because at the end of the day, the current welfare system is very stingy. It's designed to keep people locked into it. But there is some programs that are beneficial to people. And also, it's worth mentioning that just a flat UBI wouldn't be enough for a lot of people. So ideally, you give the UBI to lift people up, and then they still have their welfare when they need it. And eventually, because of the UBI, we'll get more and more people off of welfare over time, and hopefully eventually maybe get close to phasing these out. But in our current reality, I think the best way to do it is to have them stack together and work together. I think they work perfectly together. It'll be good to give those people some extra support.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments there. I think part of the reason we're going to turn to this second question, which is for the both of us, of why we should be having universal programs instead of means tested programs, really talks to why some people have this notion that it should be in replacement to some aspects of welfare, not all necessarily, but some of the cash-based means tested programs. Some people have said that that could be a funding source for this type of a program. Matthew, what is your take for why universalism is better than means testing?
I think because at the end, I think the biggest thing with means testing at its core is supposed to target relief directly to those who need it. But at the end of the day, just because how the system works and how fine the margins it is and how like incompetent bureaucracy can be at times, a lot of the targets end up missing out on it completely. So with universalism, we get to everybody that needs it will get it. With means testing, a lot of people that desperately need this stuff either just don't have the means to even apply for this, or they just miss out on it completely because of little details that knock them out.
Yeah, my big reason, I've given this speech on many occasions, whether it be in past videos, articles on why means testing is mean, or even recently at Erica Smith's fundraising event on universal basic income, which I hope you all will go support her. My big reason for why universalism is a necessary thing over means testing is 2 things. 1 is the efficiency aspect, and 2 is the fact that no one gets left out. 1, on the efficiency aspect, we know when you are doing means testing, you are taking an additional step to say who gets it and who doesn't. There is additional paperwork to try and figure out who should be getting this program benefit and who doesn't. And so this leads to potential errors in saying who should be getting how much, as well as any at all. This leads to delays. This leads to people committing fraud in order to try and get additional benefits. This causes disincentives to people because they want to retain benefits, and so therefore they don't work as much because they would lose economic benefit from doing so in certain cases. There's a lot of inefficiencies that come from a program requiring this, and we saw that this year when we had added all these additional means-tested programs with a currently underfunded IRS, leaving tens of millions of people without any returns from their taxes this year, tax refunds. And so I ask people why we would want to exclude people when we can be making this up simply on the tax end. We're not making this any more progressive, leaving people out, and we are making the programs worse for it. We're trying to help people. If we're trying to do that, make the programs actually worthwhile, make them universal, so we all are stakeholders in the success of that program. And then the discrimination point, I bring this up because, even some of the greatest progressive successes have always left some people out in an occasion. Medicare and Social Security left out a lot of the non-old who are still poor and still in need of a basic social safety net. You had the New Deal, which excluded in a lot of cases Black people from participating in a lot of the jobs programs within it. And so when it comes to universalism versus any other system, I just don't want to leave people out. Everyone is in some degree of need of help. And so we should be making sure that these basics are secured for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so the final question that we got on the subject of UBI as we wrap up today is on how do you pay for it? My take on how do you pay for it is that first and foremost, we have to acknowledge how things are funded in America. You have to recognize that funding through spending is different than how we get money in through taxation. They are two separate independent decisions. We do taxation as a form of offsetting the additional inflationary potentially spending into the economy, of putting new money into circulation, or through benefit of additional spending, or directly through stimulus. And so taxation helps us to control the monetary supply by taking some out of the system, as well as disincentivizing certain behaviors. So that's the first thing. We can afford UBI regardless. We could hit the print button today and say UBI exists. Now, when it comes to what are the best forms of taxation that we should be embracing in America to be raising funds, I do think we need to be embracing more things that are going to be efficient, things that are making sure that we are making the people who have stored up this wealth are paying their fair share in and are not constantly escaping taxation through tax loopholes. And then further, we got to be raising a lot of the existing rates. We could be going through things like a value-added tax, which has natural deflationary impacts, which helps prevent some of the concerns around UBI and make sure that, corporations spend their fair share. But there's so many forms. You could do land value taxes. You could do externality taxes like things on carbon, or on, sin taxes like alcohol and marijuana and tobacco and all other forms of things that we think are negatively impacting society. There's a whole suite of things that we can be doing to pay for it. But first and foremost, we can pay for it simply because we control our own currency. Like, taxation is a separate matter from spending, and we should recognize that, and recognize that people need a base amount of income and simply provide that, and worry about what is the best way to recoup money back as a secondary matter.
Yeah, I think
do you have any thoughts?
I think that's important to shed light on, because so many people just don't understand the difference between what you described right there, and they just don't really understand how government funding works in the first place. So I think these kind of conversations about what actually goes on and how it works are really important.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly think that we need to be talking about the actual way government works. A lot of people have not been taught the civics, and we want to keep it simple for you all. So that's what we do here at the Basic Brief. We answer your questions to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need to be talking about these issues, and we cover what's most important happening going on right now. So that's going to do it for us here. We want to make sure that you're plugged into the People's Basics community, though, and can answer all your needs by going to the description section and finding our link tree that has all of our links. That's how you get plugged in here, all of our different communities. Whether you want to send us a question, as we do for each week with our mailbag, whether it's our social media, our Discord where we do our organizing, joining our team, or anything you could potentially think of that we have going on. So please do that. And as well, make sure that you are subscribed to our network so that you are always notified of our newest forms of content. That being said, we will see you all next Friday for our next episode of The Basic Brief. We hope you all stay classy out there, Universal people. See you all then.
See ya.